Could I run a hypothetical by you?
Is sure.
Do you know which one I'm going to run by you?
No. I
Um,
have a feeling.
okay, well, stop me if you've heard this one before. If you're on a plane that crash lands in a desert island, and you come to, and you realize that there's only one other person who has survived the crash, they woke up before you, and they have, while you were still asleep, gathered all the coconuts on the island, which they're happy to share with you on the condition that you suck their dick. Would that be a consensual arrangement for you to say yes to this?
Yes.
Ah, well, I fundamentally disagree, and I think that that's insane of you to say.
Um, okay. I would say it's definitely unfair, but it's still consensual.
Then your definition of consent is meaningless. You know, you could have like in the sleep, like on a boat with two people on it, like one person could gather all of the like all of the food or whatever and be like, oh no, in order to get this now, like I'm gonna fuck you. And then it's like, oh well, that's consent. It's clearly not consent. It's definitionally coercion. Which is not meaningfully consent. I mean, this isn't just my definition. The law would agree with me by setting up circumstances where a person has no choice but to say yes, you're functionally removing their ability to consent.
Okay, but now I'm seeing how you're analogizing this labor market. But people do have the ability to not work for an employer. There's nothing stopping you from becoming self-employed as you currently do.
There is actually. If everyone could just become self-employed, they would become self-employed. The economy
No, they
doesn't.
wouldn't.
Yes, they would. The economy doesn't allow for 330 million self-employed people. Necessarily, hundreds of millions of people must abide by traditional authoritarian, capitalist business management. I mean,
Well,
maybe any individual could get lucky and live free of that, certainly. But obviously, if that was the case, we'd have no businesses or corporations. Nobody would be an employee.
but it's mutually beneficial to the employee and the employer to enter into an employment contract. That's why employment at firms still exists.
And it's mutually beneficial for you and the person with the coconuts. You get the
Yeah.
coconuts and they get their dick sucked. It doesn't make it any more consensual.
Again, with the coconut example, it's consensual but unfair.
Well, it's
There's
not. The law would agree it's not consensual. It's coercive. The conditions have been set up in such a way where you don't really have a choice.
You do have a choice. You did it.
Well, you could die, but that's not a real choice, is it? That's like saying a person's giving you a real choice when they like put a gun to your head and say your wallet or your life. Like,
Vaush, you're self-employed. You did it. You made the choice.
yeah, do you think that would apply to everyone?
Every individual person can attempt to be self-employed, yes.
Attempt to. But
Yeah,
people have bills to pay and rent to pay and families to feed.
yeah, sure. And?
So, meaningfully, then, the economy is not set up in such a way where this is a meaningful choice. If the economy, if things were set up in such a way that maybe you wouldn't have to suck the dick for the coconuts, but one in a group of several people who had just woken up would have to, that would still be a coercive system. Maybe you can luck out of it and not be the one who actually has to suck the dick, but somebody will have to. And the arrangement there is set up in such a way that some people have to take the fall. We're talking, after all, about a society with billions of people globally. I mean, we're not just talking about any individual rolling the dice on being a YouTuber. As much as that might be fun for that person, like the fact that I did this doesn't change the fact that we're being watched now by thousands of people who are going to have to go to work tomorrow morning. And they can all try to be self-employed. Everyone can try. But obviously it doesn't work out that way.
Well, in the Coconut Island example, somebody has monopolized the resources to becoming a coconut merchant. And that it just doesn't, that's not a condition that exists in society today.
Sure it is.
No, it isn't.
Yeah, with the
You
means
can
of production.
acquire capital.
And you can acquire coconuts. But not everyone can be a member of the bourgeoisie, because being a member of the bourgeoisie is defined by your relationship to the proletariat. If there's no proletariat, you can't be bourgeoisie.
I don't see the point of establishing, you're not bound into being bourgeois or proletarian. It's a fluid thing that you can change between.
And yet, the system is set up in such a way that it is virtually guaranteed that the vast majority of people will be workers who work paycheck to paycheck, and a very small minority of people have disproportionate control and power. Power which is increasing year by year.
Do you believe in declining marginal benefit of money?
I've heard that term used in a few ways. Can you specify?
So the idea is, if you're broke, the first $10,000 you earn, that's literally life-changing. But if
Oh,
you're,
this. Yeah, certainly. Money is worth less the
yeah,
more of it you have.
again, so we agree here. The trade-off that people make when they agree to become self-employed is they can expect to make some amount of money if they try to be self-employed. Maybe they have some amount of capital and they can expect to earn a wage of $40,000. And but the thing is with self-employment labor is there's a risk to that. Some years you earn a little more, some years you earn a little less. So
What would they do being self-employed?
produce goods and services.
Self-employed? As what? A street market vendor?
Yeah, sure. That's an example.
So again, the problem I have, and this is one of the things that makes me wonder, like, if we're having a real world conversation or if we're having like a you've read a lot of posts and you have strong opinions conversation.
Uh,
In the real world, the vast majority of people work. They work long, tiring hours, often with no reliable guarantee on their hours or scheduling, and they're not paid very much to do it. The problem that I have with conversations like this, which open with what I consider to be a pretty ludicrous position, the idea that that aforementioned coconut example is not one of exploitation, um, is the idea that like we're operating in this fantasy universe where people can just choose to be in different situations. The reality is most people sell their labor for money, and that arrangement is not one that people consent into meaningfully because it's something they have to do to survive. Hell, even if they were self-employed, they would still be workers, would they not? They would be, at that point, managing not the exploitation of their boss, but rather the exploitation of the economy of scale and the fact that for the same amount of labor, there are people in the economy who make far, far more. And they can't benefit from that because they're locked out of access to the means of production. They're still a worker. They're just one without a boss, you know?
Well, sorry, I was eating. This distinction of that self-employed person still being a worker, sure, they still perform labor, but they're also owning capital. It's a simultaneous position of being both, and that's why I don't believe that this is a particularly useful dichotomy. But
I would disagree.
Okay. But if I were to continue where I was, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
This person who can, with my former example of a person becoming self-employed, if they expect an average income of, again, say 40,000, some years it's 10,000 more, some years it's 10,000 less. The years where they earn 10,000 less are, oh shit, I'm going to go fucking broke sort of years, where the years where they earn 10,000 more is just, oh, that's neat kind of years. Whereas if they, so there's the expected utility of a $4,000 income is lower than the actual utility of a $40,000 income. So it's not so much that they're forced into, you disagree with that?
Completely. The premise here has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Well, I'm explaining why somebody would voluntarily enter into a contract.
But no, but that's the framing here is what I take issue with. I don't think there is a voluntary. In a system where there is a coercive force that determines the decision to enter into such a contract, I don't believe that it's the term voluntary contract is a rapist term. It's for rapists. I don't believe in it. What we're really talking about here is social incentives. People are socially incentivized into engaging in certain behavior. And as long as those social incentives exist, as long as their incentives are meaningful, as long as they guide people's behavior, they must be treated as forces that operate on us. And if these are forces that operate on us in a way that lead to a very small number of people growing very powerful, and the vast majority of people being left in poverty and desperation, I think that that must be critically examined. Whether or not they consensually agree is, well, if you want to do that, sure, then the serf consensually agrees to the terms of the lord by living and farming the land. They could leave if they wanted. I don't believe in this. I don't care whether or not people agree to the cookies on the website and the button down at the bottom. It's about what actually happens.